Okay. So first things first, I'm obviously not Patricia Lopez. My name is Ivailo Kolev. I'm Senior Water Supply and Sanitation Specialist working for the bank and being based in Romania. However, together with Patricia, we are in the finance innovation team of the bank, and we are working together to help actually find new ways and opportunities to increase the financing for the water supply and sanitation sector across the world. Now, today with us, we will have three speakers. Two are present here, and I will introduce them, and one we have online. So we have, no, actually two are online and one is present here. So we have Dilip online with whom I have worked a bit in Ukraine on improving energy efficiency and introducing options to finance energy efficiency projects directly by the market. He will be talking about opportunities, financing energy efficiency projects, and I will ask him to focus in his presentation on those new opportunities that we are seeing lately, especially because of the increases of electricity. I know that you know, at the end of the day, we are not preaching here for more concessional financing. So I think that people, Dilip, will be really interested in escrow options and other opportunities that are existing, or we can borrow from other sectors to help for improving, de-energizing, energizing, or whatever our own sector. We also have Juan Bofill from the European Investment Bank. He will be talking about EU taxonomy. This is something relatively new, but I think it's also going to be quite interesting for you, because this is the way forward for the EU money grant and not only grant money to actually strengthen the efficiency of water services, green economy, and etc. And this is affecting our sector as well. And last but not least, we will have Lubomir Filipov from Sofia Water, who will focus on supporting green startups and giving them opportunities to really test their ideas in Sofia Water Company, which I used to work for in the past. So these would be the three key speakers for the session of on financing energy measures in the water supply and sanitation sector. And in addition to these three speakers, we will later on have Edward, who will present what the Swiss embassy is doing to support energy efficiency measures in Albania, and Mr. Sokol Ksafa, who will also you know, help us understand better what Kosovo is doing in this regard. So this session is going to be focused on financing such energy efficiency incentives. Last thing, before I hand over to Dilip, I'm usually very nice and easygoing, but then I tend to forget this when I'm moderating. So please stick to your timeline, and then we'll have time for discussion, questions. And let's make this as lively as possible. So Dilip, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation. I would love to be there in Tirana, but unfortunately I could not on this day. I'm going to very quickly present some of the options for financing energy efficiency projects in the water sector. As we all know, water supply and treatment facilities are very energy intensive, and the total operating costs as a function of the total cost of energy as a function of total operating costs are very high, ranging in some cases as high as 40 to 50%. Many of the opportunities for improving those costs exist because the existing energy use is very inefficient because of old equipment, limited knowledge of the staff, poor maintenance, and many other reasons. And also, this is affected by the large amounts of non-revenue water, which is quite present in most of the utilities in the region. Improving the energy efficiency has tremendous benefits, not only in terms of reduced costs, but also better financial performance, reduced water losses, and lower vulnerability to electricity prices, which, as we know, are increasing rapidly in today's world. There's also reduced need for future investments in power supply and improved electricity supply efficiency. The opportunities for improving efficiency are enormous. They include improving pump efficiency as well as redesigning the pumping systems to make them more efficient, using water loss management to reduce leak reduction and use pressure management, modern technologies like SCADA or smart pumps, various wastewater treatment technologies, particularly tertiary technologies and thermal hydrolysis, and then demand-side measures to reduce water consumption. The important thing to understand that many of these measures have investments that typically have simple paybacks, sometimes as low as 3 months, but generally less than 5 years. Now, financing energy efficiency has always been a challenge. We recognize that many previous projects have used grant financing, but we also recognize that grant financing is limited and may not be sustainable in the long term. So the countries and the water utility associations must continue to develop and implement measures that can allow for additional leverage of public funds, and in particular, to try and leverage private financing to help improve the efficiency of the water systems. So the long-term goal should be try and leverage commercial financing. Methods for this include performance contracting, energy service companies, and so on. Now, we have in the World Bank developed the concept of what we refer to as a financial ladder. The financial ladder starts off at the bottom with public financing, mostly grant financing, and gradually increases the proportion of private involvement and reduces the amount of public financing, so that as you move up the ladder, you would get increased access to commercial financing. Ultimately, what we want is to go to entirely advanced commercial financing or project financing. Now, this is starting to happen. Countries in the region are already moving up this public financing ladder. For example, direct lending to municipal utilities in 2 countries, the energy savings capture mechanism, which I'll describe in a minute, in several countries, then going on to energy efficiency revolving funds, public or super escrows, and partial risk guarantees. I will very quickly cover a couple of these options. What is important to note is that we will be looking at options that would allow you to look at the 5 or 6 options that are currently being utilized to increase the role of commercial finance. So let's start off with the direct lending to utilities. In this case, the international organization essentially provides the loan directly to the public utility, and the national government guarantees this. This has been done in the past, and then the investment project is financed by the utility. But the problem here is that the international institutions would not do this unless the public utility is creditworthy and has the capacity to design and implement projects. So while this is possible, and it does use some private involvement in terms of the energy service providers, it is again not extremely sustainable. Energy savings capture is a mechanism that recently applied in a couple of countries. What this involves is that a account is set up within the ministry, whether it's the Ministry of Finance or the ministry that controls the water utilities. The baseline energy costs are then reduced by energy efficiency retrofit. The cost savings that are achieved are then placed in a separate budget line for captured energy savings. And these savings, of course, accrue for a large number of years because most of the equipment lasts in 10, 15 years. So these captured energy savings are accumulated, and these savings are then utilized for investments in new energy efficiency projects. We have recently designed this in Uzbekistan, and the project is about to get going this year. Another mechanism that is quite popular now is the establishment of energy efficiency revolving funds. The revolving fund is created using funding sources such as international financial institutions, government budget allocations, and other sources. The fund then provides a loan to the public agency for energy efficiency project. The public agency then engages the energy service providers to install the equipment and provide the energy services to create the savings. Now, the advantage of the fund is that it can create a number of different options. You can have basic debt financing, where a loan is provided to the water utility, and the loan is repaid from the savings. But we can also use something called energy service agreements and possibly public-private partnerships. And the revolving fund can address these issues also. So let's look at the energy service agreement. In the energy service agreement, which has been very successfully applied in Armenia, the baseline energy costs are provided to the energy efficiency fund for a number of years. So the water utility would agree to pay the baseline costs that they have experienced in the past for the next 5 to 10 years to the energy efficiency fund under the energy service agreement. The fund would then make investments into the energy efficiency retrofit and reduce the energy bill. And the fund would recover its investment from the savings that are created. When the fund has essentially received its investment and its return on investment, the contract expires, and the new energy bill is then, after the contract is reduced, and the water utility benefits from the cost savings and all the other benefits. As I mentioned earlier, this has been very successfully applied in the case of Armenia. The next thing I want to talk about is the possibility of using a public-private partnership. In this case, the Energy Efficiency Revolving Fund provides funding to the public and private sectors by allowing the private sector to make an investment into the project, and then allowing the public utility to collaborate with the PPP as the partner. The PPP, the public-private partnership, then works with an energy service provider such as an ESCO, and then allows this to happen in terms of using the funds to create the savings. This is an example that has been applied in the country of Bosnia for using the Energy Efficiency Revolving Fund to help the public-private partnership being created. The next example is a public or super ESCO. A super ESCO is an entity created by the government. The government essentially established a joint stock corporation, and it provides that super ESCO the ability to contract with the various utilities using 100% financing. The financing comes either from the government or from the donor agencies, and also the donor agencies provide funding and technical assistance. The super ESCO then essentially manages the entire process of identifying and implementing the projects and engages the private ESCOs to provide the services under subcontracts. The advantage of this is that not only it allows the public sector utilities to participate in financing, but it also creates and establishes a market for private ESCOs. Again, this has been established in about 6 or 8 different countries. Another option is to provide commercial bank financing but commercial banks are reluctant to invest or provide loans to agencies in the public sector, partly because of their credit issues, partly because of lack of collateral, and partly because of the potential for non-payment or delayed payments. So a risk guarantee needs to be provided to them, and the risk guarantee can come from either an established fund or it can come from the government. Example of this includes a risk guarantee program that was created by the IFC, the National Finance Corporation, in 6 countries in Eastern and Central Europe, where they provided a guarantee facility. This was primarily for energy savings in buildings, but it can equally apply to energy savings in the water utility. What we are now trying to do is to see if the same thing can be done with private financing with a risk guarantee. Now, the important thing to understand here is that the currently available technologies and the opportunities are so great that private sector is interested in making investments, particularly when the returns on investment are pretty good. Paybacks less than 5 years. We have a case under consideration right now where a private investor is willing to invest 5.4 million euros in a water utility, which will reduce the energy consumption by 45%. And the investment will be repaid through the energy cost savings achieved by the utility. But the challenges faced by the private investor are the creditworthiness of the utility and the fact that national governments are not willing to offer a sovereign payment guarantee to the investor. So the risk of non-payment is preventing this project from happening because the private sector management is saying that what happens if we don't get paid? So we are working on a potential solution of establishing a risk-sharing facility using our agency called MIGA, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, which provides guarantees to private investors. And this guarantees program can be adapted to provide guarantees against the default of payment. So this has been done again by the World Bank in many countries. In the IFC program I mentioned earlier, in 6 countries in Central and Eastern Europe, the IFC provided a guarantee using GEF funds. In India, the World Bank has established a large program called the Partial Risk Sharing Fund to do the same thing. And MIGA has done guarantee coverage for a wastewater facility in Jordan and is also covering investments in a bulk water facility in Rwanda through the Risk Sharing Fund.
You have 1 more minute, Dilip.
This is my last 2 slides. In this case, an example that could work, and this is something we're currently working on, is that MIGA provides a commercial credit guarantee. The ministry provides the financing through a local partner to the water utility, either directly to the water utility or through a water holding company. And the water utility then engages the contractors to provide the savings, and the contractors' payments are from the cost savings achieved and are guaranteed by MIGA. So to conclude, many sustainable financing options are available. I've talked about 4 or 5 or 6 of them, and the World Bank Group is currently interested in collaborating with water utilities, utility associations, and holding companies to work with governments and regulators to leverage private financing by providing them attractive opportunities for investing in efficiency improvement to reduce energy costs and environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dilip. This was very interesting indeed, but let's not be scared of these complicated schemes that Dilip was explaining. At the end of the day, you know, they are pretty standardized documents on the market, and we are actually building on things that have delivered results for other sectors. Dilip is a retired energy specialist working with the World Bank Group, and we're building on his energy knowledge. And so far, it is working quite well in some of the countries that we are trying to push these schemes forward. In some others, as he knows, we need to do a bit more upstream work to allow for some of these schemes to work. Thank you very much, Dilip, and please stay online so that we can, further tap to your brain during the discussion session. Now I will hand over to Juan, and as I mentioned in the beginning, he will walk us through the new EU, relatively new EU taxonomy, and I'm sure that it's going to be interesting for you as well. Juan, over to you.
Well, thanks a lot. Okay, first of all, I would have to apologize because I'm in Lisbon. I could not be in Tirana. I would have loved to. I'm in the conference center, so it's probably here a lot of noise. I hope my earphones are trying to hide a little bit these noises, but I will try to do my best. Well, first, the why a taxonomy? What's a taxonomy? No, as you have there, the EU taxonomy is a classification system which makes up a list of what activities, economic activities, are environmentally sustainable. Okay, and that comes because the EU had the climate change clear goals in the European Green Deal. You know that by 2030, there's a reduction, a target of 55% reduction in CO2 emissions. And by 2050, the great target of net zero emissions. So the market, so the idea of the EU was to how do we channel the investment in the way that these challenges or these goals are achieved. No? And this is why they established a taxonomy, which at the end of the day is a list, as you will see. So the EU approved a regulation. Do not confuse regulation with directive. A directive is something that the Commission approves, and all the countries have to adopt it, and they have to adopt it according to the legislation. So they can vary or they can increase, for example, to be more demanding in the case of a directive. But in the case of a regulation, they have to adopt the regulation as it is. So it has to be applied as it is. No, so regulation was approved where 6 environmental objectives were defined. 2 related to climate change, so climate change mitigation and adaptation, and 4 other objectives related to circular economy, pollution prevention, protection and sustainable use of water and marine resources, and protection and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems. So what happened is that the EU created a group in order to start working on defining the activities, so screening the economy and looking at activities that can qualify for being eligible for mitigation and adaptation, and defining what is called technical screening criteria. So if an activity qualifies or is under the thresholds, for example, in energy, you will see later in another slide, then this activity can be qualified as sustainable for the EU.
We're still on the first slide here. Are you trying to move the slides? Yep.
Yeah, I'm moving the slides. So
not in here. Actually, we just see the first one. Can you click on the slides on the left? Yes, this is the second. Now,
okay.
Probably we're already on the third one, right?
Yeah. So we'll move it. Can you see it now?
Yes. Now we're on the third slide.
Okay. Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry for this. It's,
okay.
Yeah. Zoom is always problematic for us. So as I said, the activities are screened out in relation to these objectives. No. So the first 2, climate change adaptation and mitigation, were already defined, and this taxonomy related to these 2 first objectives was approved and adopted in June 2021. So it was approved by the Parliament. So it's already in force early in 2023. So we are already applying it, as you will see. And there's another second delegated act, so another legislation that is being prepared in relation to activities that are eligible for the other 4 objectives. And this will happen during 2022 and likely will be in force mid or end 2023. So this is not known. But it was relevant for you today, especially for water utilities, is the screening criteria for climate change adaptation and mitigation in the taxonomy. So this is the platform structure, and I don't know if it's relevant for you. There was several groups. One of them was the group of water, and the secretary of the sector team 10, the one dealing with water and waste. So the EU taxonomy is a list. As you can see, it's a list, publicly, it's perfectly public. is a list of activities, and a list of technical screening criteria. The technical screening criteria has to be based on something. It has to be science-based. It has to be, let's say that it has to. The technical working groups. What we did is looking at all the science available in relation to activities and prepare this technical screening criteria that were tested also in the public consultation. Has to be this screening criteria has to be related to existing work. We couldn't work. It was a 1 year, 2 years work. So we cannot investigate or do a new science research in order to prepare another criteria. So they have to be dynamic, and they have to be very easy to use. And also something important, it has to be related to first investment, to CapEx, and also OpEx, meaning that a water utility company that is already operating infrastructure can be able to apply this criteria in their daily operation. Okay. So yeah, I will move because I think you will be more interested in the criteria itself. Well, this is how it looks like, and water is already there. Water sector, as I said, in the first delegated act, which is already enforced. What we have in the water sector, we have three main. Let's say three main subsectors. Let's call it like that, which is water collection, treatment, and supply. So for drinking water, it's already specified that we're talking only about drinking water. Agricultural water is not included in the first delegated act. Maybe this is an ongoing work, so maybe in the future there will be opportunities to include agriculture there. So okay, so for construction and extension of water collection systems, we have two main criteria. So we have the criteria of being very efficient in terms of energy. So if we have a system, a water supply system, that let's say the energy invested per cubic meter is under 0.5 kilowatts hour, this means that this system is already efficient in terms of performance, in terms of energy consumption. This means that, for example, the new investments that are, or this, imagine this hypothetical company asks for a loan, and the company, the consumption of the company is 0.5 cubic meters, kilowatts per cubic meter, then it means that this loan to this company will be eligible for as taxonomy aligned. And this is quite important, as you will see at the end, because we are the European Investment Bank, we are already applying this taxonomy. The next one is because there's some utilities that are not here yet in this 0.5 kilowatts. So there was another criteria that could make them qualify, which is a infrastructure leakage index, an ILI, which you will hear more and more. This ILI is the indicator prepared by IWA. So let's say that if the ILI is lower than 1.5, which is very demanding, as you can suppose, then it means that the utility is a very well performing, and it's a taxonomy aligned in the performance. So the aspect also was looked at the way of how do we improve an utility, how the investments done by the utility, and this is linked with what my colleague said before, the renewal of water collection and treatment systems or reduction of losses, how do this improvement can be incorporated in a taxonomy. So there are two criteria. One of them is that if the investment done reduces the energy consumption of the system by at least 20% compared with the baseline, this will mean that this investment will be also qualified as taxonomy aligned. So will be considered green. It's also important to say that for utilities that are not or in a difficult position because the ILI is very high, the idea was to do some kind of closing the gap, meaning that the investment, if the investment at least closes the gap by 20% or reduces by 20% the gap between the current ILI and the ILI of 1.5, that could be also eligible. Okay. Next one is related to wastewater. In wastewater, we have something very similar. For construction extension of wastewater collection and treatment systems, we have thresholds for energy consumption per population equivalent. Sorry. So for small wastewater treatment plants, we have 10,000 PE, for example, and that's 35 kilowatts hour, the threshold. So consumption under that are considered as efficient, and of course the coefficients or the threshold are going down when we are talking about higher or bigger installations. For example, 100,000 PE, the threshold is 20 kilowatts. And the other part is also the same, renewal of wastewater collection and treatment systems. So any investment that achieves a reduction of 20% in the energy consumption will be also qualified as eligible. I'm going to conclude because I don't have much time, but also anaerobic digestion was included in that taxonomy. So any investment in the anaerobic digestion, a new anaerobic digestion, rehabilitation of anaerobic digestion, has been considered as taxonomy aligned, because as you can see, you can capture the methane and you can reuse the methane. You have to reuse the methane, by the way, in order to be eligible. This is the condition. And also that you have to have some monitoring or contingency plan to minimize methane leakages. The other, we also have a taxonomy related to climate change adaptation, and this is very broad. You can look at it in every website. You can click, read it. There are a lot of conditions related to projections in the future about the impacts of the climate change in our facility. That's more complicated, but since it's not linked to energy, so I just wanted to mention for you only for information. The second delegated act ongoing work is already. I mean, we are working on that, and as I said, water is also included there. So if the activity doesn't qualify for climate change mitigation, it might qualify for the other objectives, which are protection of waste of water resources, for example. No? So there's not only climate change adaptation and mitigation, we will have more objectives. But for the moment, and relevant for this session, is the energy consumption. As I said, the EAB, and this is my last slide, the EAB is already applying this because by the end of 2021, what we did is we approved the climate bank roadmap, and we are committed to apply the taxonomy there. So, for example, when we are saying now if a utility of our investment is eligible for climate change mitigation, it means that it fulfills the criteria that you saw. And this will be quite relevant because not only us will apply that, also other institutions in the future will apply that. Maybe utilities, maybe utilities, maybe other financiers, also commercial banks that don't have a reference might use this in order to qualify investment as green. So it doesn't mean that it's not eligible. So we can finance any eligible activity in the water utility. But let's say that this energy consumption and these thresholds will put this a step above and will have another label, which will mean taxonomy aligned. Again, I apologize because probably the noise is not so good. And sorry for not being able to project the slides properly. But thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, Juan. Indeed, this was an interesting topic and relatively new to me. Maybe participants know more, but I see, the understanding, definitions, targets, and financing, being aligned, and this is most likely the way forward if we want to achieve these sustainability results that we are discussing. Thanks a lot, and please stay online for the discussion. And now we move to our last speaker, Lyubomir Filipov. And Lubo, we have already seen from Zhelyas information about Veolia. So please, focus just on those, innovative things and green startups that actually it's great that you are providing an opportunity to work together with your company. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lyubomir Filipov. I'm part of the executive team of Sofia Water Company. As we have discussed in the previous panel a few, maybe 2 hours ago, innovations are not penetrating very fastly into the water sector because of the reasons that the colleagues have discussed. In the following slides, I'm going to show you how we are dealing with innovations from startups, newly established companies, and how we implement these innovations into our ecosystem. For example, Veolia, it's a global water, energy, and waste management company operating in Bulgaria in a few directions, as the biggest chunk of the business is related with the water sector in Bulgaria. Why we have decided to support the startup ecosystem in Bulgaria? First of all, because we have very interesting, very bright, very smart guys who have very interesting solutions for the water sector. And we wanted to test this to see whether these solutions are applicable into the water sector, which is by itself, it's a conservative one. It's not moving very fast. And we wanted to test. Also, the recent maybe 5 to 7 years, we have a lot of financing in Bulgaria coming from the European Union, through which financing a lot of venture capital funds were established. And these venture capital funds are looking for good projects. I mean, companies were there to put the money they have. So first we have the ecosystem, we have the companies which can provide interesting solutions, and we have the funds which have to invest into these companies. The only lacking element into this was exactly the technical validation of the ideas of these startups. Because the venture capitalists, they are guys who they want to make money from startups. They don't understand the business. They don't understand the green innovations. They don't understand so much the solutions which could be implemented into the water sector. That's why we decided to find a venture capital fund which is operating in Bulgarian market and to make a joint venture with that fund. As the idea is the venture capital fund to give the money to the startup, and we as Veolia, as Sofia Water Company, to validate on the spot the solutions of these companies. So we take these companies on board. We put these people from the startups to work with our engineers, and we're telling the venture capital fund whether that idea is applicable or not, whether that have a, let's say, technical rationale behind or not. And then if we say, okay, these guys are good, they could, perform well, then the venture capitalists are more willing to finance these companies. That's why on the slide here, you see what kind of companies we have targeted. We have targeted like startups, newly established companies, which need pre-seed or seed financing. And they are just needing someone to be behind them and to support them. That's the profile of the company. It's not a companies with a big balance sheet. It's not companies which have a client base. Just companies coming from, let's say, nowhere, but with good ideas and good teams. Because for us, it's very important to have a teams with a knowledge. Also, these companies, we decided to find a venture capital fund where we can not only validate from technical point of view their ideas, but also to work with the venture capital fund and their acceleration program. The acceleration program means that these startups were, let's say, educated in modules like marketing, finance, accounting. So it's like a very fast track training performed by the venture capital funds on the main elements of the business they are going to develop in the future. So we found a venture capital fund which have such acceleration program where these startups could be educated in a way. So we have launched that program 2 years ago. Last year, we launched a call where we received around 50 applications of different companies. Of course, the topic of the call was green innovation, circular economy, water management. I mean, areas into which we as a company could validate the technical solutions of the companies. Out of these 50 companies, we selected 6 companies, which we put these companies into that acceleration program for 1.5 months. After the acceleration program was over, there was like a demo day, like a pitching day. There was a jury of colleagues of mine and myself and people from the venture capital fund. Each company came and tried to convince us that the solution they provide could fit our business model, can bring additional value to us. And out of these 6 companies, we selected 2 companies which we wanted to validate on the spot in our company, in Sofia Water Company. So this is the first company, Nova One. You can see on that slide that these guys are people from the high school. Not like young professionals, not like people with a very big experience. They're guys from the high school, and not in Sofia, but in the countryside. So these people, they are producing a solution based on sensors, where we put these sensors into our network for monitoring in real time the quality of the raw water. It was very interesting because, okay, the sensors, you can buy sensors from everywhere. Okay, it's not a big innovation, frankly speaking. But the innovative thing is that they have an IT guy in the team. And based on artificial intelligence, based on machine learning models, which we supported through data, which we provided to them, they can make predictive analysis when we could expect the quality of the raw water to be worsened because of climate, for example, issues or rains or whatever. So now we are testing this, and it gives pretty good results. The other company, SatGeo, it was very interesting because the profile of the founders of that company is totally different. It's not as high school guys. Actually, they experienced people who worked on a project in a state administration. They decided to form a company. So one of the guys was a water engineer. The second lady was very good in GIS systems. And the third founder of the company is a lady who is very good in business development, sales, marketing, and so on. And also they have a few analysts and mathematicians as well in the team, because their, let's say, solution is based on data we provide for the failures of the network in particular areas of the city. And based on the satellite images, they can find hidden leaks of the network for which we don't know as a company. And we said, okay, let's try and let's see what will happen with that. We provided them data about the failures of strategic mains, which big pipes filling up the city, which are in the forests, which are in the agricultural land, where we don't send teams because the access is not very easy, and there is no leaks on the ground. So they made data analysis based on the satellite imaging, based on that model of the data which we provided, again on a machine learning. And they said, okay, go over there. There is a hidden leak we don't know about, which we don't know about that. And we said, okay, let's check. We send the teams, we dig, and we found a leak. And another one, another one, another one. Now these guys, they have a contract with us, and for 1 year. Because at the beginning, all this was for free for our company, because we are validating the ideas. As soon as we see that these people, they are doing good job, then we sign contracts with them. So yes, we are paying for that, but we are receiving very, let's say, high quality service, which also could be replicated within the rest of Veolia companies all over the world, Bulgarian companies, SatGeo. This year, we made that exercise again. Here, okay, the focus shouldn't be on me. This year, another companies, we selected other companies. Again, the idea was companies which are startups, companies which are reducing the emissions of the CO emissions, which are somehow helping the climate. Companies which are making the business more efficient. So this year, the winners are two companies. The first one is called Decarbonizer. They're producing a device, a small device, which they put in the engine of the cars, for example, or buses or trucks or whatever it is. And it produces a gas, which when you put that gas into the engine system, it's reducing the consumption of the fuel, and also it reduces the CO2 emissions. Now we are going to test this, because these guys, they validated this in the city of Varna on the Black Sea coast. With the city transport system, they validated this into the buses. Now we will take that device and we will, for example, validate this in our trucks, our cars, our fleet, and see whether it's work or not. Entrance Expert, this is another company which made special software for the management of the condominiums and flat managements. I don't know how it's in Albania and the rest of the Balkans, but it's a nightmare in Bulgaria if you want to, split the bills between the customers in one condominium. It's a nightmare. These guys, they made the optimization of the process, and now, for example, that solution will be tested by our customer service department and see whether it can help us in order to better manage the customer accounts in the company and our relations with the flat managers. I'll just say a few words about Horizon 2020 because our belief as a company in Sofia is that innovations could be taken from everywhere, not only inside, not only from Veolia, let's say, Research and Innovation Center in Paris, but we can take innovation from the outside market. So the examples which I have presented are like for startups. Of course, we are working on EU-funded projects. Yesterday, there was, I think, a presentation when we saw that there are many, there are not a lot companies from the Eastern Europe, and especially on the Balkans, which are participating in the EU programs for research and innovation. Currently, we have 2 such projects. I'm not going to go into details about this, but
yes, 1 more minute. Lubo.
1 more minute. It's Aqua 3S. It's about groundwater management and the monitoring of the quality of that water. And the other project, it's about our sewage system, early warning about outflows and floodings. Other collaborations, this is collaborations for innovations with the Sofia University. I'm not going to go into this. This is Senseto Hives, Smart Bees. It's another interesting project, again, startup. But maybe what is interesting for you, and because this is the topic of yesterday and today's session, it's the energy efficiency and optimization, grid metrics. Guys who are like 20 plus years old, young professionals, they came to us and said, okay, we have an algorithm through which you could reduce the costs of the pumping stations or the whatever it's using electricity. We started with them. We tested their model in 1 pumping station. It was very efficient. We reduced the costs and also the volume of the used energy with around 20%. And now we're going to test that model in the other pumping stations. So this is for me. The takeaways: look for innovations from everywhere and give chance to the young people to help, because sometimes they are smarter than us. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you too, Lubo. This was very interesting, and I must say that this is not something that I see what supply and sanitation companies doing. So, we will ask you actually during the discussion how you came up with this idea and how you actually find time to do such things on top of your day-to-day work. But please join me here for the discussion panel together with Mr. Edward. Edward, please, and Mr. Sokol. Now, I know, Edward, that you have a presentation, but maybe, briefly, without, projecting the slides, you will start by telling us, what the Swiss Embassy is supporting in Albania, and of course, what is achieving in this regard for energy efficiency, the topic of our conference, and of course, sustainable measures that we want to use in our sector. So Edward, over to you.
Thank you very much. Just to give one broad picture about Swiss cooperation in Albania, we have just launched now the 4 years cooperation program between Switzerland and Albania. for the next 4 years, and where we'll be supporting Albania in the 4 key areas: democratic governance, economic development, employment, infrastructure services, and climate change and health. So in each of these domains, Swiss government is going to contribute with around 24 million euro grant funding. So one of these 4 domains, which is infrastructure services and climate change, part of that one is the new partnership that we just launched yesterday between Switzerland and the World Bank and the government of Albania in the framework of the new National Water Supply and Sanitation Sector Modernization Program. For your information, this is the first program that will, let's say, transform the whole sector in Albania for the first time over the last 3 decades of this lengthy transition. So it is a joint action of the government of Albania contributing with around 60 million euro, World Bank with 75, and $7 million grant funding from the Swiss government. 3 are the main, let's say, outcomes: strengthen the national sector framework, improved operational and financial performance of utilities, and improved access to water services. Now, related to the topic of today, we believe that this is very important when it comes to the sustainability, that already all of us recognized that around 40% of the utilities costs are related to the energy. And we know that a big number of utilities have difficulties to pay the energy bill. And this has created a lot of debts from the utilities to the energy distribution operator. And this is a big, let's say, issue that has to be challenged. So far, we have also noticed that there are some good pilots of energy efficiency that have been successfully implemented, but at the same time, they still continue to be islands. So what we'd love to see is to have a kind of a scaling up of all these energy efficiency, let's say, pilots throughout the whole sector and in the old utilities. The point is for that one is to take a systemic approach, because it's not only energy efficiency measures, but it has also to include, let's say, the renewable energy sources. And Albania is blessed with renewable energy, and solar panels here come on stage. Now, what we'll do with the new program that we just launched together with the World Bank, one of the first things that has already been done, a scoping assessment was conducted in 4 utilities, and it validated that the potential for the investments to cost savings have been significant. Now, down the road, in the roadmap, what we foresee is that we need also to do energy audits, because they put also, let's say, the baselines to see what is the current situation in the targeted utilities, and also to identify the issues, and then also to design the corresponding measures, how we are going to find the solutions for responding to these deficiencies. Again, holistic approach has to be applied. As all, let's say, the presentations have shown today, here is not a question, let's say, of only the pumps. We talk about also the water leakages from the demand perspective, that also includes the PV installations and other aspects. The problem will, in the end, will contribute significantly to increasing the sector's resilience towards climate-related natural disasters, such as flooding and drought, but also pandemic. Because as you already have witnessed and experienced, emergency and risk management action plans are becoming now part of the practices of the water utilities in order to, let's say, be ready, prepared to respond to unforeseen or unplanned, let's say, other pandemics or other risks in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent overview, and hope that together with our own team, we will help the government to actually transform the sector along the lines that you have outlined for us, Edward. Now let's hear from Sokol before we open up the floor for questions, and he probably can share his personal experience being a CEO of Pristina's water supply and sanitation company, about financing of energy efficiency measures, or even lack of financing and challenges that he is facing in trying to improve the energy efficiency of his company. So, call over to you.
Thank you very much. Përshëndetje për gjithë. Hopefully everybody's awake after a heavy lunch. But let's get back to your question. Actually, we as a regional water company, because in Kosovo it's a little bit slightly different compared to the region, the way how the water sector is organized. And basically we are 7 regional water companies that we cover the whole cycle of the water, starting from the sources to the wastewater treatment plant. And getting back to your question, most of the water utilities are facing these problems due to a huge consumption of energy. For instance, for some of our customers, we have to pump even 5 times. And basically, even we are using mainly surface water sources from the reservoirs, also underground water sources, but basically we have to pump every single liter. And referring to our previous speakers, yes, we have more or less 30% of our revenues. They go for electricity bills for the power consumption from our utility. Nowadays, what we are doing as a utility, because some of the pumping stations are rather old, we have to get back and to reflect also to the history that we've passed on 1999. Some of our pumping stations were bombed during the NATO bombing. And basically we had to get back, at least the utility, because I was not part of the utility at the time, to get back to the old pumping stations. What we are doing now, at least we are trying to improve while we are installing VFDs, variable frequency drivers, because we can't replace the whole pumping stations. We have 72 pumping stations in the system. And of course, due to tariffs, it was mentioned also yesterday by Ms. Morina, head of the regulatory office, that the tariffs are the lowest in the region in Kosovo. They pay less than 50 cents for water and sewer in regional water company Pristina. And with these tariffs that we have as a utility, we can't afford to invest in parallel, replacing the network, replacing water meters, and then replacing pumping stations. But at least we are trying to touch everywhere the most, let's say, critical infrastructure in order to keep the system under the pressure. Luckily, as a utility, not saying luckily, but according, let's say, to a full engagement of the team, we succeeded since 2017 to supply all of our customers 24/7. For some of the utilities, it's normal, but unfortunately in the region, it's still a problem getting water 24/7. So since that time, we realized to have this, but in parallel, unfortunately, we faced also an increase of non-revenue water, and that's another problem that everybody's speaking, but unfortunately, the success we are still missing in the region. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Indeed, I was listening to the previous sessions and was thinking, because at the end of the day, utilities need to make a choice. Where do we invest the limited amount of money that we have? Do we invest, to make sure that the water supply is guaranteed? We fight non-revenue water. We try to improve the collection system and treatment, or we focus on those energy efficiency measures, replacing pumps that are still working, still delivering. Yes, they consume a lot of electricity. However, they might be not the most urgent issue to do. And indeed, if you have a limited funds, you always go for the infrastructure that you need to maintain. And then if there are some money, you do invest in extending your infrastructure. However, because of the current situation with energy prices, utilities are forced to start thinking, okay, maybe, we need to reduce our costs, because the more we pay, the less money we have for investments. So I think what Edward said, that they are going to finance energy audits, and this is, going to take some time and money. But this is probably, the way forward for some companies. We did with DWF something different in Ukraine, not being able to spend so much money on energy audits. We've decided to go for, the low-hanging fruits, and maybe he can share a bit more. But this is similarly to what Sokol was saying. We know how many pumping stations we have. We know the oldest pipes. Even without an energy audit, we know where the most energy consumption is. So let's start from there, and then we continue. So we were getting questions from the chat, and let's try to look what they are about. Get the Monet cell. Monet is a painter, right? Maybe I mixed money and Monet. Not a problem. If you have Monet, you have money, because you sell it and you have money. Unfortunately, I don't have my own Monet. So then I will just go to DWF. DWF, if you are not having, money for an energy audit, and you want to do something fast, what do you do? Or what would you advise the water companies to do based on your experience?
Our experience indicates that if the water utility can put together a very detailed database on their operational situation, we have done this in Ukraine, where we created a very large spreadsheet where the water utilities were able to provide very detailed data on their operating characteristics. And we believe that that might be sufficient for some of the private sector entities to consider in terms of what may be possible based on the age of equipment, the operating conditions, the amount of energy being used per square meter or cubic meter of water supplied or water treated. Those types of information can be reasonably clear from the point of view of the private investors to figure out roughly what types of investment may be needed. And what we're looking for now is the ability to use that type of detailed information without conducting a full-scale audit to move forward. Now, of course, the full-scale audit does give you, it costs a lot of money, but it does give you much more detailed information to act upon. But we believe that it can be done even without a full-scale audit by providing some detailed information. And that's what we're working on right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So if there is a will, there is a way, as people say in the US. So utilities can start doing things if even if they don't have sufficient funds to start the energy audit, and they can start building on some of the things that are identified, even without having an energy person. But I do agree with what we have discussed, in the previous session. They need to put focus and efforts on energy efficiency to be able to move forward and become a bit more energy efficient. Now, what I want to hear from Juan is actually based on this EU taxonomy approach, and the figures that you are quoting to us, consumption, electricity consumption per kilowatt hour of water, produced or wastewater treated. Do you have a specific policy in EAB how to help companies achieve these results, or for you, as you mentioned, it's either a checklist. You either fill this criteria or you don't. And can you please share with us a bit more about those targets that you've mentioned in your presentation? Over to you.
Yeah.
Juan.
Yeah. Yes. So thank you. Thank you for the question. Well, the AB, in principle, what we do, well, when we work with the EU countries and utilities in the public sector, we have what we call the hub, which is advisory hub. Is we channel funds from the Commission in order to advise, in order to be able to create or to build a project, to make it bankable. Okay. And that includes, why not, if we have an utility that they need to know how to apply the taxonomy and how to make it to get it under the thresholds, there will be a possibility there. And you can enter into the website of the EIB, say advisory hub, and you have a lot of information there. And I really concur with what Dilip said. What we face a lot of times is that we have a request from a utility, and what we see is that they don't know their own network. For example, they don't know the length of the network. They don't know the infrastructure leakage index, for example. It's something I understand that is something new. Well, it was old, it was created by IWA, but it's true that it's not applied every day in the utilities. So this is something that we can try to do, help them first understand what's the network, what's the length, what do they need exactly in terms of understand and know what's the thresholds, because as I mentioned before, a first threshold is to know what's your consumption. And if you don't know and you cannot say, it's well, it's difficult to understand if the company, it's difficult to know what's your baseline, and if the project that you are proposing and we would like to finance is going to reduce that threshold. So that's quite useful inside the EU. Outside the EU is more difficult, and outside the EU we have to operate with EU funds, EU grants that we can try to channel. But of course, there's some possibilities there as well. And as I said, the thresholds are publicly available. You just have to put, for example, first delegated act of the EU taxonomy, and you have all the information. You have all the economy. Yeah? It's not only water. We're talking about transport. We're talking about the manufacturing. We have many sectors, and the water sector is already there. And the thresholds are basically, you have to know the baseline, and then to understand what your project will do and what the project is intended to do. And we can help, of course. We can help. The idea is, of course, to go to lower the levels of non-revenue water, and also to lower the energy thresholds in wastewater treatment, which we know it's quite elevated, quite high. We also are looking to the methane reduction, but unfortunately, even though we are in the panel, we are in the as secretaries of the taxonomy, the methane reduction as such of wastewater treatment, which is really evident and really significant, was not really incorporated in the taxonomy as such. Maybe in the future. Right now, we are only talking about energy thresholds, energy per PE, and we know how this can be unfair because, for example, in wastewater treatment plants, with advanced treatment in order to reduce nutrients, or advanced treatment even beyond there to reduce micropollutants, as Switzerland is doing in their own country. That's really I mean, you get damaging, or because of course the thresholds will be higher, no? And this is something that the Commission will have to follow and to solve in the future. Well, I don't know if I answered your question, but the answer is yes. We will. We can have some facilities in order to help on this.
Thank you very much. Indeed, no, it was quite clear, and for the sector, yes, we all know, baseline assessment of assets, revaluation of assets is not something easy to be done. These assets are there, underground, and if the documentation is not properly managed and kept good records of, then it's extremely difficult. We did some exercise in Bulgaria to reevaluate the assets, and it was quite difficult and lengthy exercise. But indeed, this is where you start off. Now, before I read, the questions and some of the questions there, maybe I'll just ask Lubo to shed a bit more light. How come that Sofia Water Company decided to do this? Rather unusual, line of activities for a water supply and sanitation company to look for, to create, competition award for green startups, and actually, provide opportunities for these companies to test their ideas in a real environment.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. Maybe before answering to that, very quickly to say a few words about the financing. I mean, not of the startups, but in general, because, for example, 4 years ago, Sofia Water Company refinanced around 50 million euro debt. We had 2 loans, and we wanted to combine these 2 loans into 1 loan. These 2 loans were to EBRD and to the mother company. And because the rates were going down, we made a refinancing. So we made a beauty contest. We collect the biggest Bulgarian commercial banks, also the IFIs. And we said, okay, we're making the beauty contest, please place your offers. And it was a very interesting process, which took maybe around 4 to 5 months from the very beginning till the signing of the contract. And actually, the only one thing that these banks were interested in was the model of the regulation, the regulatory model, because the regulatory model is giving the tariff, and the tariff is your main source of funding the company. So if your regulatory model is not adequate, if it's not allowing the real price of the water to be let's say set by the water companies, then you have difficulties for finding banks, finding even IFIs, and taking loans for financing this. So for me, into that discussion, yes, you have plenty of products on the market, you have plenty of options. But when the regulatory model is not adequate, is not good, then the banks, including the IFIs, take you as they put more risk on you, and the financing is expensive. So from my perspective, apart from the adequate regulatory model, there should be a state policy into that direction. For example, when the risk is high, okay, you have different products, as you see, as you've seen by the World Bank, EIB, I guess as well, where that risk should be covered with EU money somehow. So a dedicated state policy should be implemented for no matter whether it's a non-revenue water or energy efficiency or whatever we're talking about. And going back to your questions about the startups, just to make maybe more funny your question, because we repaid our loans in January and we didn't have anything what to do else and decided to deal with startups. No. During the first few years, we saw in Bulgaria that we have a lot of newly established companies and young people with great ideas. So we had the market, we had, let's say, the companies from which we could pick. Also, the situation with the startups, as I said, the European Union now supporting the so-called financial engineering and giving money for startup companies to venture capital funds is one of the hot topics right now in Europe. And that market is boosting in Bulgaria. So that was a market opportunity, which we decided to take advantage of. So this was the first reason. And of course, the second reason is that being the biggest utility company in the water sector in Bulgaria, you have a know-how, you have an experience, so you can test this. And into that cooperation between, the big and small, we help these guys to precise their models, their solutions, and these guys open our eyes for things that we didn't notice before. And this is the last thing on this question. When we start working with these guys from the grid metrics for the energy efficiency of the pumps, and the first meeting was very funny because this was like from our side, old engineers with white hairs, and I said, "Oh, we know everything. Why you bring these, youngsters here? They cannot do anything. We know everything." And I said, okay, let's make a try. Let's see. And after a few meetings and interactions with these guys, you know, the old engineers from the company, they said, okay, do you know what? When I was young, I wanted to do similar thing, but I've never had the chance to do that. And they saw that opportunity as an opportunity to develop themselves as well. And now they are cooperating very, very, very good into that project, for example. So it takes time and change of the mindset as well.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's very important to change the mindset for actually, you know, looking and for such green startup, but also innovating in water supply and sanitation company. As we have discussed so far, we are working in a monopolistic sector that is quite, you know, difficult for, you know, embracing new ideas. Now let's focus on the couple of questions that we have on the chat. How high is the potential in the region to equip utilities with on-site renewable energy? This is something that maybe Dilip can, you know, help us answer. Frankly speaking, I have you know, a limited idea because you know we are in the Europe and we're covering my unit Europe and Central Asia. We do have you know this opportunity to explore with utilities energy efficiency projects, but you know, we're not so much advanced in actually pushing for on-site solutions. But maybe Dilip, you have a better idea of you know the natural endowments in this you know part of the world to put on-site solutions.
Thank you for the question. I obviously do not have the numbers in terms of what the potential is. All I can say is that there is a large potential because as we have looked at some of the utilities, first of all, they have opportunities to utilize solar energy, particularly when they have facilities like available land area. We're also looking potentially in the World Bank at the possibility of floating power plants, so floating solar power plants. So if you have reservoirs that the water utility is using, that is an opportunity that we have looked at in some parts of the world, and not specifically in the Danube region. And also the other thing that we didn't discuss too much was the whole area of potential of producing biogas on the wastewater treatment process. I think Juan mentioned this a little bit. This is a big area potentially, and the production of biogas through tertiary treatment can be quite high, and that biogas can then be used for power generation. I think some utilities have used that in terms of on-site generation using cogeneration opportunities so that the gas is used as a fuel for providing heat and electricity. And in other cases, that gas can be exported to commercial use in transport and so on. So the opportunities are there. I don't think there have been very detailed studies of what the exact numbers are, but in terms of the experience we have in looking at opportunities for solar, for example, solar photovoltaic generation costs are now more than competitive, actually less than most other sources of production of electricity, and that provides a very good opportunity. Before I conclude, though, let me go back a little bit to what I said earlier about the audit issue and what Ron said about the taxonomy. If you combine what I said and what he said, and you do what is called a benchmarking, I know that the Danube learning program has been doing some utility benchmarking, but much of that, some of that information that we need is not in that benchmarking program. But if we expand the benchmarking data and develop indicators, that can allow us for a very good comparison of where the opportunities are. And unfortunately, the indicators do not indicate the potential for renewable energy yet, because that is a much more difficult thing to get. But the idea is to try and develop both the spreadsheets that we would create the database from, and also use the taxonomy we created by EU to put together a database that is consistent across the utilities and allows us to do the benchmarking of most of the indicators. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilip. And Edward, you wanted to add to the topic?
Yes, with regard, thank you very much. With regard to the potential in the region and especially for Albania to equip utilities with on-site renewable energy. As I mentioned before, here in Albania, we have also some good pilots. The point is that they are just islands, and the idea is that we believe that also based on scientific data, we can come to the conclusion that the challenge that we are facing with the climate change nowadays, especially with the negative effects with the lengthy droughts and the, let's say, the reoccurrence of the floodings, we see also these challenges as an opportunity and to turn them. That means that the solar radiation in Albania has seen an increase of around 10%. So taken into account this, plus also that there are around 360 sunny days in this country, this is a huge opportunity to really tap on the untapped solar renewable energy. And especially here with reference to the where the energy cost goes mostly for the pumping, and as we touched it before, the whole system, but also when it comes to the wastewater treatment plant, which could really, let's say, rely quite significantly on this renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was another question, what IFIs are doing, and I think partially Dilip already answered. In addition to the traditional lending, we were pushing for different schemes to be explored in countries that really want to leverage the financing for energy efficiency projects. So if you have ideas, do reach out to us, to other IFIs. I'm sure they're also having their specific credit lines or people that can help you to put together a bankable project, the way we call it. Now it's not easy. Somebody is saying it's good in theory, but difficult to implement and risky. I don't think that it's that risky. However, sharing my personal experience, I was the one financing the CHP. This is combined heat and power plant in Kubratovo, Sofia water company, wastewater treatment station. And indeed, if it wasn't for some grant funding that actually pushed us to do this project, it was risky because for a couple of years we did not manage to produce the gas and the quality that we needed to burn to produce electricity. So there was a lot of back and forth, and especially when you're doing it for the first time, it is difficult. However, as Gelas and then Lubo mentioned, nowadays Sofia Water Company is fully energy independent, so it might take some years back and forth. But at the end of the day, when you finish and you put together a good project, it always repays. Any question from the public that is not put in the chat before we close this session? Anyone? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would like to take this great opportunity also to flag one of the new projects that Swiss government has already started to support in Albania. We call it Smart Energy Municipality Projects. Basically, it is introducing the European Energy Award that was born in Switzerland. And at the core of it is the catalog of measures that has been introduced in 4 pilot municipalities in Albania, like Shkodra, Berat, Korça, and Permet. So the point that I am just mentioning it is the reasoning to come to the question, how is the potential, let's say, the way that the IFIs could support here in developing energy efficient solutions. All these energy efficiency measures, they look into the 6 big areas at the municipal level with a bottom-up approach. And coming to the point of the utilities, we have already noticed now that that's a great potential here to intervene with a lot of measures, interventions to make them more energy efficient, or to turn also the utilities to become energy efficient utilities in the future. So what I would like to say here that together with the IFIs, that's a great opportunity where we could jointly influence the improvements in the institutional and the legal framework in the country in order to align it to the international best practices. At the same time, we could also, let's say with this project, we prepare some project proposals that would be like a kind of feasibility stage, let's say preparation. And from that one, then the IPAS could also see then how we could, with this grant funding, trigger the investments from them to make them realize these projects, including, let's say, what I mentioned before, making the utilities more energy efficiency. And at the same time, there could be also a lot of business models that could be introduced through the IFIs. Here could be like ESCO that was presented before. So there are a lot of, let's say, good practices that we all together could join forces to make, let's say, the utilities more energy efficient in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any more questions. Let's finish with the last one. We're just 2-3 minutes. So the last one is about pension funds, and I'm really interested in this one because I've worked a bit on this. But what I can say is actually echoing what Lubo shared with the public, that for pension funds which are quite risk averse to enter our market, the water supply and sanitation market, we need to assure them that there are very limited risks involved, and unless there is a really, whether we call it enabling conditions, with the European Union, or sufficient, regulations and proper normative base. I don't think that it's going to be, easy to tap on this huge, funding source. I think that there is still need for our sector, especially in the countries that we're working in as a World Bank, to have a bit more upstream work to make sure that all stakeholders are, line up. The sector is sufficiently transformed and companies credit worthy, and there is also proper governance, lack of political influence, and so on and so forth, until we can, safely reach out to pension funds and assure them that it's, a great idea to start investing in our water supply and sanitation sector. We'll finish here. Thank you very much for those online who participated in this session, for the people sitting next to me. And there is a coffee break, right? Okay, the coffee is served outside.